the government has been embarking upon a sustained misinformation campaign. Now, the latest falsehood is that the postal vote has been postponed. This has been explicitly contradicted by the chairman of the Elections Commission, Mr. Nimal Puncheva. He has clearly stated that there is no change with regard to the dates on which the postal election will be held. The only postponement has been with regard to the distribution of ballot papers for the holding of the postal poll. That is an entirely different matter. The intention of the government is to discourage candidates, to create in the minds of the public that the local government election is not going to take place any time in the near future. That is not the truth. It is simply a continuation of the tissue of lies which the government has resorted to during the last 2 or 3 months. Last Friday, the petition that we have addressed to the Supreme Court was taken up for consideration. And the court said that there was no need to issue the writ of mandamus which we had sought, which I as a petitioner had sought, because the Elections Commission has readily agreed to hold the election. There is no need for a compulsive order, because spontaneously, voluntarily, the Commission has agreed to hold this election, and that was recorded. In that situation, every institution, government department, ministry, corporation, every official is under a paramount duty to extend the maximum cooperation to the Elections Commission with regard to the conduct of this election. That is a mandatory duty devolving upon all state officials, ministers, everyone. Now, what has happened? The head of the government printing department, Gangani Liyanage, has demanded payment in full at the very outset. She has demanded 410 million rupees. This has never been government practice at any time. How many millions are owed by the Ceylon Electricity Board? How many millions by the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation? Thousands of millions. How much money does the Agriculture Ministry have to pay to companies that have supplied fertilizer? It has never been the case that money is demanded upfront like this. And this is unprecedented. This practice was never resorted to with regard to the conduct of any election in our country in the past. Now, the Independence Day celebrations, completely wasteful, irresponsible, and extravaganza for self-aggrandizement. Now, a great deal of material was printed for that occasion. Did Gangani Liyanage ask for payment in advance? No. This is discriminatory. This is done with the sole intention of making it as difficult as possible to hold this election. It is mala fide. It is for an unlawful, unconstitutional, collateral purpose. In any case, the total sum that she is demanding, 410 million rupees, nothing like that is required for the immediate purpose, that is the printing of the ballot papers that are required for the conduct of the postal election. Only a small and infinitesimal proportion of that money is required for the immediate purpose. Why then is she having recourse to this very unreasonable position of demanding the money in full? She is clearly contravening the law, because she is acting for the sole and exclusive purpose of frustrating, of stultifying the efforts of the Elections Commission to hold this election. Then the attitude of the Secretary to the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Mahinda Sirivardhana. Now this 410 million rupees is being demanded by the government printing press. The Secretary to the Finance Ministry is not releasing this money. It seems that the government printing department has the paper, it has the ink, it has the equipment, it has everything that is required for this purpose. The only problem is with regard to the payment of overtime. That is a relatively small problem. Now that problem arises from a circular which has been issued by the Ministry of Finance. We cannot allow the franchise, the suffrage of the people to be destroyed by so trivial a matter. In those circumstances, there is a clear duty on the part of the Secretary to the Finance Ministry to sort out this problem. He cannot sit back and say, I have no money to give. Therefore, no elections, no democracy, no franchise. That is a totally irresponsible attitude which we cannot acquiesce in under any circumstances. He must bestir himself and try to resolve this issue which is standing in the way of the people of our country exercising their cherished right to vote. He must take a proactive role in this matter and resolve that. Mr. Mahinda Siriwardena, Secretary to the Ministry of Finance, is a custodian of the funds of the people of Sri Lanka. This is not money belonging to government leaders. It is not money belonging to the government at all. It is money belonging to all of us, the citizens of this country. And there are judgments of the Supreme Court, authoritative judgments. Mr. Siriwardena is discharging a public trust. It is a fiduciary obligation. The content of that obligation, the ingredients of it are authoritatively spelled out by the relevant judgments of the Supreme Court. If the Secretary to the Ministry of Finance violates those norms which are compulsorily imposed upon him, then he exposes himself to liability. And as an opposition, we will do everything in our power to ensure enforcement of the laws of this land, particularly in a situation where what we are fighting for is the basic right of the people to exercise their franchise. That is the source from which all other democratic rights and freedoms flow. It is fundamental, and we cannot allow that right to be placed in jeopardy. This is why the entire opposition, without any difference of opinion whatsoever, we have all come onto the same page, and we are fully dedicated, total unity of spirit, to uphold elections in this country, and we will exert every conceivable pressure within a democratic framework to compel this government to hold the election and to uphold the rights of the people. This argument that what is preventing the holding of the election is the scarcity of resources is an absolute falsehood. That is not the reason. What is lacking is not money, but political support for the government in power. This is a government which has no mandate at all. It is entirely lacking in legitimacy even at the basic level. It is a government which owes its origin to a deal in Parliament, a very dishonorable deal, with which the people of the country had nothing to do. There is no nexus between the public and the government. It is a government that is far removed from the aspirations and the wishes of the people of our country. Therefore, we will address this as a political issue, and our response will be political. If there is no other language that the government listens to, then let the people speak for themselves. Let the people decide and tell us in no uncertain terms, are they content to let the fate that befell the provincial councils of this country to be the lot of local authorities as well? For 4.5 years, no provincial council elections. The government dare not hold those elections. So as we speak, not one single elected member in any of those provincial councils. Now this is a government that fears the public. No elections, because it knows full well what the outcome will be. It will be a devastating rout. So the government solution is simple. When they know that there is absolutely no prospect of winning an election, the simple solution is not to hold the election, to find one excuse after another. Our approach is twofold. We will pursue all legal remedies, not maliciously, not vindictively, not because of ill will towards any of the officials or others concerned, but simply because it is a sacred duty to do everything that we possibly can to protect the fundamental rights of the people. Take Neil Hapuhin. He committed a very grave offense. He purported to act on a non-existent cabinet decision. He directed district secretaries all over the country to stop accepting deposits. And what has happened? There's an action filed against him by Mr. Mujibur Rahman, former member of parliament. We are prepared to intervene in that litigation and to ensure that the maximum penalty prescribed by the law is visited upon Mr. Neil Bandara Hapuhin. Any other official who places himself or herself in that situation will be dealt with accordingly, and we will do everything possible to enforce the law. The Elections Commission must send for Gangani Liyanage and ask her these questions. As recently as last Friday, she told the Elections Commission that the printing process is going on and the ballot papers can be handed over to the Elections Commission on time. Something happened over the weekend. Did anybody send for her? Did anybody exert undue pressure on her? Is that the reason why she changed her mind? This is not a personal matter. She cannot oblige somebody as a matter of courtesy or good manners. So the Elections Commission definitely has a duty to send for her to get to the bottom of this and find out why she completely changed her position. Equally, the Elections Commission must send for Mr. Mahinda Siriwardena, the Secretary to the Ministry of Finance. And what are you doing about this? Are you content to sit back, adopt a completely passive, docile attitude? Simply say no money. There's money for everything else. There's money for 39 state ministers, not a whimper out of the finance ministry. There's money for wasteful extravaganzas, not a whimper out of the finance ministry. How come? Are the priorities sound or are they totally distorted in a democratic society? These are questions that the Elections Commission must put to the Secretary to the Finance Ministry and to the head of the government printing department. One last point. There is now a definite attempt on the part of the government to stifle the media in this country, both the traditional media and the social media. This is because the government does not want the media to place before the people the true facts relating to these sustained attempts to indefinitely postpone elections. There's also action contemplated by all trade unions, a large number of trade unions in this country next week. Now, the true facts are placed before the people by the media. While the country is going through one of the most difficult periods, no food, no medicines, extreme adversity, but bribery and corruption, financial irregularities are continuing without any restraint whatsoever. Take, for example, the situation with regard to the coal tender. Scandalous. So much so that the government itself appointed a cabinet subcommittee to probe this matter. What has happened now? Two respected ministers, both of whom are President's Counsel, the Justice Minister Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa and Foreign Affairs Minister Ali Sabri, have both resigned from the Cabinet Subcommittee. They have resigned, and in writing they have stated the reasons for their resignation. The reason is that facts are distorted. The truth is not disclosed even to the Cabinet Subcommittee. In that case, is there any expectation at all that the truth will be disclosed to Parliament or to the people of the country? The truth is hidden from the Cabinet Subcommittee. So they are saying we have no intention of participating what appears to be a very questionable transaction, what appears to be. We want no part of it. We want to distance ourselves from it, and we are therefore relinquishing our membership of the Cabinet Subcommittee. We would respectfully ask both ministers whether that is an adequate response. If they feel that there is pillage and plunder or the likelihood of pillage and plunder of the resources of this nation, can they just distance themselves and say, we don't want to soil our hands with this, therefore we are leaving the subcommittee? Is that an adequate discharge of their responsibility to the people of this country? Now, all of this is being brought to the notice of the public by the media. That is why the government is so keen on suppressing the media. Then take the pathetic, the very dismal situation in the health sector. We are told that only essential operations will hereafter be performed. Does anybody in this country enter hospital to undergo an operation under anesthesia for an operation that is not essential? Does anybody have an operation for the fun of it? So what is this distinction between essential and non-essential surgical operations? 80% of the medicines that are being used by the people of this country have not been certified by the regulatory authority, the NMRA. We don't know what medicines we are taking, what the beneficial effects of those medicines are. There are frauds aplenty. All these facts are brought to the notice of the public by the media. That is why at this critical moment, when more than at any other time the public need to be informed, the government is endeavoring to suppress the media, but as the opposition, all of us collectively will use our strength to defeat the government's attempt to stifle the media.